Thank you. Roll call, please, Yana.
Councilmember Johnson.
Here.
Councilmember Losi.
Here.
Councilmember Stanfield.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Trent.
Here.
Mayor Long.
Here. All right, thanks for joining us on this beautiful, beautiful evening where I would rather be outside. We have the pleasure of meeting some new employees tonight. Our first one is going to be the introduction of the street maintenance worker 2, Chris. Or I'm sorry, Christian's his name. Bob's introducing him. All right.
Good evening, Honorable Mayor and council members. It is my pleasure tonight to introduce our newest Public Works employee on the Streets and Drainage Division. And to our audience, Christian Gaucher. Christian was born in San Francisco and raised in between Mendocino and Santa Rosa area. Christian spent 30 years raising his own family in Santa Rosa. In his off time, he likes barbecues and watching baseball, Giants for sure. The other thing his passion is about is riding motorcycles. Christian relocated to Humboldt just about a year ago, and the attraction was cooler weather, which is kind of funny today, and far less traffic congestion. Christian's future goals include learning and exploring the local region, and then lastly, to build a strong relationships between neighbors, fellow employees, and local leaders. So just like to introduce you to Christian.
Hello, everyone. My name is Christian Gaucher, and I'm very happy to be part of the street maintenance program, and I'm very thankful for my position in the city. Thank you.
Welcome. Thanks for joining us.
Oh, thank you very much. Thank you.
All right, our next one is introduction of our new records clerk.
Good evening, Mayor Long and Honorable City Council. First off, it's my esteemed privilege to introduce not one, but two new city employees that will be working with us at the police department. And at this time, I'd like to ask Angela Conley to join me at the podium. So Angela really needs less of an introduction than most people. She's pretty involved in the community, as is her family. I guess it would not be an overshoot to describe their level of commitment to the community as prolific, engaged in several of our community events and youth sports and different organizations. One of the things that struck me about Angela during the interview process, which was very competitive, and just to kind of put a little bit of substance to that comment, we had over 20 applicants for the position of full-time records clerk. But back to kind of what impressed me most about Angela was her background in customer service and just her charisma and the way in which she deals with people. And so I think it's going to be an excellent fit for our front lobby, and she'll be the new face of the police department for our community, directing them to the appropriate resources and things that our public needs from our police department. So a little bit about Angela, and most people here know her. I see she brought her entourage with her, taking up the complete back row. Angela is married and the mother of 2 sons. She has served on the Hops and Humboldt Committee and with the fire department's Ladies Auxiliary. She is currently a member of the PTO, and her family helps every year with the Santa Sleigh program. Angela has also worked in many different areas, ranging from sales to healthcare, and has even worked with special needs children. She is happy to now be a part of the PD family, and honestly, we are very grateful to have her. So please join me in welcoming Angela Conley, our new records clerk.
Angela Conley. I am super grateful to have the opportunity to work back in Fortuna, and I look forward to learning all the new ropes of what the city has. I'm super excited.
I'm pretty sure it was your smile that sold them. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, but last and certainly not least, I would like Esmeralda Gonzalez Herrera to join me at the podium. So I'd also like to introduce the department's newest officer, Esmeralda Gonzalez Herrera. Officer Gonzalez comes to us with some prior experience with the Humboldt County Sheriff's Office and most recently with the Humboldt County Probation Department. Officer Gonzalez is living here in the city of Fortuna. She is the mother of one daughter and has both an associate's degree in social and behavioral sciences from CR and a bachelor's degree in criminology and justice studies from HSU. She's already completed the first 2 mods of the police academy and will start her career with the city of Fortuna as a reserve officer while she looks to finish the final mod of the academy. In talking with Esmeralda, she is very excited to serve the community of Fortuna and make a positive impact. Frankly, we are excited to have her. Please join me in welcoming Esmeralda Gonzalez.
Esmeralda Gonzalez. I'm pretty happy to be here, and I'm really excited to be able to work with the community, and thank you for having me here.
Welcome. It's nice to have you.
Thank you.
Our next item is a presentation on the Ray Mills Memorial Project by our same Chief, Casey Day.
Thank you, Mayor. So really this is just a report back. I felt that the council may want to see a little bit of the progress that's been made with this particular project over the last 18 months. For those that are not aware, this was a project dedicated to a former police officer, Ray Mills, who lost his life in the line of duty on March 12, 1967. Ray Mills, from what I understand, in an exhaustive historic background check, he was very well liked within the community and among the other officers that he served with. So as I mentioned, approximately 18 months ago, and we can go ahead and switch to the next slide there, Sienna. Approximately 18 months ago, Fortuna police staff began working with Senator McGuire's office to approve a highway memorial for Ray Mills. In the last week of August 2022, I received a direct phone call from Senator McGuire advising that the Memorial Highway Dedication Project had been approved and signed into law as SCR 98. Next slide. So the project had enormous community support. It was something that was brought to my attention when I came over from Reading in 2020. I would like to publicly thank at this time the Fortuna City Council, the Humboldt County Board of Supervisors, and Senator McGuire for supporting this meaningful memorial. The police department is responsible for the financial costs associated with signage for the memorial, and through donations and fundraising, a little over $4,500 was raised. I would like to publicly extend a thank you to the Fortuna Police Employees Association and the Foundation for their assistance with fundraising, and I also would like to thank the late Lee Stuck and his family for their generous donation following Lee's death. The Ray Mills Memorial Highway will include approximately 2.8 miles of US Route 101 as shown on this slide, so you can see starting at the very northern end of the city of Fortuna and extending down to approximately Kenmar Road. A memorial dedication date and ceremony will be announced here in the immediate future. Currently, Caltrans will be completing the signage to properly mark the Memorial Highway. From what I understand, that is also a somewhat lengthy process. We are not the only organization with a highway memorial dedication that was approved during this last legislative session. So as soon as we do get word back that the signage has been completed, we'll work with all of our stakeholders to come up with an appropriate date for the dedication. And that pretty much wraps it up, and I'll take any questions if there are any.
Does anyone have questions?
I don't have a question, but I just want to say great job spearheading this and getting this through. It's been a long time in coming, and I think it's very fitting that we do have this memorial out there on the freeway, so everybody bypassing, coming through Fortuna will think a little bit about police officers and the daily struggles and how they put their life on the line every single day. So thank you for doing this.
Sure, absolutely, thank you.
Anyone else? All right, thanks, Chief. We'll move on to our public comments, oral comments from the public. If anyone from the public would like to make a comment or address the council on any item that's not on the agenda, now would be the time to come up to the podium.
Good afternoon. My name is Reed Elmore. I'm a coach at College of the Redwoods for track and field and cross country.
And Josh Quintal, also coaching track and field at College of the Redwoods.
I'm here tonight because we've kind of, we've acquired the ability to put on the Northern California Championships. Teams from Fresno all the way up to Oregon will be coming here to Humboldt County to participate in the championships. And we chose Roanoke Park to host it at. So we wanted to come, and this is your guys' community, so we wanted to formally invite you guys to participate in any way you see fit or come out to the race. I can give you guys my number if you guys have a way that you want to participate in terms of being there, introducing the race, introducing whatever. The dates of the race, there'll be a preview race that's coming up shortly at September 17th on Saturday, and the championship itself will be November 5th on a Saturday. And
Yeah, can we get a contact number?
yeah, my number is 707-502-9545.
And then Josh Quintal, my number, 707-498-5933.
And we're going to be also talking to some local businesses and see if they want to put together coupons for the teams coming up. There should be approximately 15 teams coming up to participate, and hopefully their families. And this hasn't happened in about, I think, 25 years. So it's kind of a historic little thing that we're doing, and it's a chance for us to show off our community. And we're looking for a place to have it, and I ran cross country for Arcata High, so I was like, oh, Roanoke Park, we always go there, whatever. And then I went up there thinking it in terms of someone else who's never been here, and it's spectacular. So it's a chance for us to kind of appreciate our community as well.
Is this cross country?
Yes, cross country meet.
Yeah, because we've had there used to be several cross country events in there with homeschool groups, middle schools. I think the high schools had some events. It's a good location.
Yeah, we get spoiled here. We get used to stuff, and we don't really think it's as nice as it is. And then someone else comes up and they're like, "Wow!" So we're extremely happy.
Yeah, and this is by far the biggest meet that Fortuna's hosted, for sure. So we've had high school meets, like you said, and middle school, but for us to host a championship meet in Fortuna, being a Fortuna resident, I think is awesome, because we're usually known for like our high school kind of stuff, but for us to kind of break out of that and have something sporting event that's bigger than that, it's a pretty big deal.
So you can contact us and we can talk later, but it would be nice to have someone do the official welcome or something like that before the race. I think there has to be an official starter, but it'd be nice to have the city of Fortuna represented in an official welcome, and and hopefully we'll fill up some of the hotels and campgrounds around here for the races.
No, that's exciting. I'll check my calendar, but I think I can be there. So
Perfect.
thanks for coming
How
tonight.
many people on a team usually?
There's 7 people on an official team. The preview probably won't have as many teams coming up, but they can run as many as they want. So some of the teams will have as many as high number would be 20, and there should be at least. I probably think there's going to be like 14 teams coming up for the preview.
Wow. Okay, thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
Awesome.
That's
Thank
exciting.
you.
Thanks, guys. Anyone else from the public? All right, we'll close public comment and move on to our consent calendar. We have 5 items, including city council minutes, report of disbursements, a biennial review and consideration of amendments to the city's conflict of interest code, which is resolution 2022-24, authorization for the city manager to continue teleconference public meetings for city council and all city committees, commissions, and boards pursuant to Assembly Bill 361, resolution 2022-25, and approve a supplemental budget request to purchase a storage container for the city's animal control facility using asset forfeiture funds, whatever. Okay, does anyone want to pull any of those items? Seeing none, does someone want to make a motion?
I'll make a motion, we accept the consent calendar items A through E.
I'll second that.
All right, we have a motion and a second to approve the consent calendar. All in favor?
Aye.
All right. Moving on to city council business, our first item is professional services contract for PA and ED services for the 12th Street and Highway 101 interchange modernization project. Our city engineer could not be with us tonight, so I think Aaron is going to give us our report.
Yes, thank you, Honorable Mayor and City Council. I'm going to go ahead and read through the staff report that was prepared by our Public Works Director, Brendan Bird. And then if there's any questions, I can jot those down and make sure to get an answer to you guys. So in 2016, the city completed the Highway 101, Fortuna Downtown, and Riverwalk area complete streets planning study. The study was a multi-agency effort with the goal of providing an assessment of design alternatives to improve connectivity between the city's downtown and Riverwalk area. In addition to approving the general connectivity for multimodal transportation, the goal of the assessment was also to identify projects that would increase the vehicle level of service for the United States Highway 101 interchanges with 12th Street and Kenmar. And at both locations, roundabouts were identified as the preferred design alternative. In 2021, the Humboldt County Association of Governments indicated that there would be funding available in the form of state transportation improvement program funds. This was welcome news given that the previous cycle was not able to program any funding for local agencies, as the entire amount was dedicated to the Caltrans Indianola Interchange project. After reviewing the funding opportunity and the list of priority city projects, staff identified the 12th Street Interchange Improvement Project as the project for which the city would apply for. To position the city for the opportunity, staff worked to develop a Caltrans approved project study. The report was completed in late 2021 and was subsequently used to secure $950,000 in grant funding from STIP. The scope of work will include the northern interchange of Highway 101, 12th Street and Newburgh Road, in addition to the pedestrian crossing of Highway 101. Due to overall funding limitations, the interchange improvements on the south side of the highway, which includes Riverwalk and Dinsmore Drive, were not included in the funding application. With funding identified and approved by the Caltrans Transportation Commission, the Public Works Department released RFP in March of 2022. The proposal submission deadline closed on April 13th, at which time the city received a single proposal from GHD. The proposal has been included as Attachment A. The proposal includes all tasks that are necessary to complete the work to Caltrans requirements. GHD is a well-qualified candidate to complete this project and currently serves as the city's on-call traffic engineer. Additionally, GHD is the engineering consultant currently under contract to complete the same phase of engineering design work for the city's Kenmar and US 101 interchanges. Because the city received only the one proposal to complete the work, the city was required to complete a public interest finding and to submit it to Caltrans for approval. The accepted document has been included as Attachment B. So upon approval of award, staff will begin contracting with GHD, and work on the project is expected to begin in October. So with that, it is staff's recommendation to authorize the city manager to award a professional services contract to GHD for the 12th Street and Highway 101 interchange project for a total contract value not to exceed $950,000.
All right, thank you, Aaron. Anyone from the council have questions?
I've got a comment to
Okay.
make. It's exciting to see this moving forward. It's been a long time coming. And besides just the traffic portion of it, it will provide a safe path of travel to the other side of the freeway from here, going south, which is, for all intents and purposes, cut off right now. And I look forward to this one being done. I can remember when I was still working, going to Caltrans with Merritt and laying this out in front of them and getting the ball rolling, and it's snowballed, and it's nice to see that we're at the point where we're doing the preliminary design and the environmental document. And their scope of work was very lengthy, but it was complete. I had all their subject experts listed, and it seems like this is really going to take off and get the ball rolling. So, thank you.
Anyone else?
Yeah, I'd like to just say, as Aaron mentioned, and it was in the report, that this intersection as well as the Kenmar overcrossing, those are two goals that this council and the city has with regard to the development at the old mill site, Palco mill site. It's imperative that for us to draw any kind of development into that area, that we have those two intersections completed, that we have work moving forward on those. And this is just the preliminary first step in getting that done. If you get a chance to take a look at the scope of work report, on the very first page, and I know you can't see it from where you're at, but it has a design of what the roundabout will look like on 12th Street. And let me see if I can, no, gotta come this way. Gotta come this way. I'm trying to get it on the camera. There we go. But it is amazing, and if it comes out half this good, we're gonna be in very good stead. And I can't get over the professionalism of the GHD report on this project. So it's an excellent step forward for us. So thank you.
Anyone else? If you would like to see the design, you can log into friendlyfortuna.com and go to the council agenda packet, and there is a picture in there that you can actually see.
In color.
I think it might be even in the on the one of the drop-down menus under current projects. They've got some better pictures even.
So check the website if you really want to actually see more. Anyone from the public wish to comment on this item? Seeing none, we'll close public comment.
Madam Mayor, I'll go ahead and move to authorize the city manager to award a professional services contract to GHD for the 12th Street and Highway 101 interchange modernization project for a total contract value not to exceed $950,000.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right. Our next item is a discussion on regarding the Fortuna Business Improvement District audit update presented by Ryan Plotz, and I believe Ryan is joining us via Zoom.
I'm here. Good evening.
Hi, Ryan.
How are you? So the purpose of tonight's report is to provide the council an update on the audit of the Fortuna Business Improvement Corporation's financial records for the prior 6 fiscal years ending June 30, 2021. As the council is aware, the Fortuna Business Improvement Corporation administered the Fortuna Business Improvement District, or FBID, under contract with the city since at least 2005. The corporation is a legal entity, wholly separate and distinct from the city. Until its recent dissolution, the corporation operated under the guidance of a volunteer board of directors and employed a full-time executive director to manage the corporation's day-to-day operations. Under the contract with the city annually transferred to the corporation the revenue generated from the business assessments. In return, the corporation was responsible for managing and expending those funds in a manner consistent with FBID's purpose, which was to promote and is to promote the city's business community. Because the corporation administered public funds, the contract obligated the corporation to conduct annual public audits of its finances, among other things. During the 6 fiscal years ending June 30, 2016 through June 30, 2021, the corporation failed to conduct its annual audits. And to rectify this, the city insisted that the corporation not only conduct an audit for the immediately preceding fiscal year, but also to retroactively submit its records to an audit for the remaining 5 unaudited years. The city further provided the corporation with a loan to pay for the cost of the 6-year audit to ensure it was completed in a timely manner. As is more detailed in the written staff report with the agenda packet, the substance of the audit was completed in late December 2021. And initially, the corporation was only willing to publicly share the audited financial statements prepared by the auditor. The corporation was initially unwilling to share with the public or city staff the auditor's findings and recommendations, claiming, on the advice of its counsel, that the auditor's written findings and recommendations were confidential. The city strongly disagreed with any claim that the auditor's findings and recommendations were confidential, and insisted that all audit-related documents be immediately released to the city and the public generally. After a month or so, the corporation ultimately agreed to release the auditor's internal control letters and management letters, which the auditor submitted to the corporation's board of directors. The corporation released those documents to the city on March 30, 2022, and the city immediately made those documents public. As the council is aware, the council has previously reviewed those subsequently released internal control and management letters during prior public meetings, and further discussed its rather concerning findings. As is detailed in the internal control letters, which is attached to the staff report as attachment B, the auditor identified some significant management issues in the overall management of the corporation's finances. These issues included a lack of oversight of the executive director by the board of directors, a lack of internal financial controls, which the auditor concluded likely resulted in financial mismanagement and all financial control largely being vested in one individual, the executive director. The auditor noted in the internal control letters that there were errors and omissions in financial reporting and accounting. The auditor concluded by way of the internal control letter that there were significant payroll issues, including that the executive director largely did her own payroll with little to no board oversight, and that the executive director, quote, often paid herself in advance of working, close quote. The auditor also found that there was a lack of adequate policy and controls for cash receipt and the accounting of the gift card accounts. Upon review of the internal control and management letters, the council was understandably concerned about the continued viability of the corporation to appropriately administer FBID and the public funds generated through the FBID assessments. As such, Mayor Long and the city manager requested to meet directly with the auditor to obtain a better understanding of the underlying bases for the findings and recommendations contained in the internal control letters. As part of that meeting, the auditor explained that she also found in her audit process that the former executive director likely received overpayments of compensation in the approximate amount of $10,000 during her tenure, which spanned from 2015 through 2021. The auditor further explained that this finding was not included in the written audit findings or the internal control letter at the request of the corporation, which request was made through its counsel. The auditor further explained that in December 2021, the auditor directly interviewed the former executive director about these payments and encouraged the former executive director to repay the funds to the corporation, which did not occur. The city manager and the mayor requested from the auditor any documentation that would support the auditor's findings that overpayments of compensation were made to the former executive director. And the auditor provided those documents to the city through the corporation's then president on May 2nd, 2022. The documentation subsequently provided by the auditor in support of her findings of an overpayment of compensation showed the following: that on June 30, 2015, the former executive director received an overpayment of $1,251.02 in hourly compensation, in addition to her salary compensation. On July 1, 2020, the former executive director received an overpayment of $4,000. On November 1, 2020, an overpayment was made of $3,000. On November 23rd, 2020, an overpayment was made of $1,000. And finally, on July 31, 2021, the former executive director received an overpayment of $405. This documentation further showed that of the $8,000 in claimed overpayments during the year 2020, the corporation's payroll records show $6,000 was paid as vacation pay and $2,000 was paid in, quote, sick pay. The auditor found these amounts were paid in addition to the former executive director's salary, and that the auditor was not able to locate any board approvals or other authorizations for these particular payments, which formed the basis for her conclusion and findings that these payments were in excess of her salary and overpayments of compensation. On May 2nd, 2022, in her transmittal email providing the auditor's documentation of the overpayments, the corporation's then president explained, among other things, that the corporation's counsel concluded that these alleged overpayments were justified under law, and that, quote, if there was any overpayment, it was not nearly what the auditor claimed, and it was not worth exposing FBID to liability for an attempt to reclaim, close quote. The corporation's then president further explained to the city manager that on the advice of the corporation's counsel, the corporation sent a letter to the former executive director on February 27, 2022, stating in pertinent part that, quote, as you know, FBID had an audit conducted this year for years 2016 through 2021. After consideration and review by the auditor and an attorney, we do not believe there was any deliberate misuse of FBID funds, close quote. While the corporation may have included that there was no deliberate misuse of FBID funds, that does not necessarily mean that an overpayment of compensation did not occur for some other reason. Accordingly, even though the corporation was not going to pursue the issue of the alleged overpayments, the city decided that it was prudent to pursue this issue directly with the former executive director and seek reimbursement if, in fact, the former executive director was overpaid with public funds. At the request and direction of the council on May 20th, 2022, I sent a letter, which is attached as attachment D to your staff report, to the former executive director. This letter, among other things, provided notification of the auditor's findings in regards to the overpayments and the other issues noted in the internal control letters, and provided her the opportunity to repay any amount she concurred represented overpayment of compensation during her employment. In particular, I wrote, quote, "The city is not yet able to opine as to whether the overpayments resulted from a deliberate misuse of FBID funds or whether the payments were a result of some other cause or circumstance. Regardless, as these are public funds, the city has an obligation to see that the public is made whole if, in fact, the auditor is correct in finding you received $9,656.02 in overpayments. Accordingly, the purpose of this letter is to notify you of the auditor's findings regarding the above described payments and provide you the opportunity to repay any amount you concur represents an overpayment of compensation during your employment. If you are so inclined, I ask that you contact me prior to June 2nd, 2022 to let me know your intentions. If you disagree with the auditor's findings, you are encouraged to provide an explanation," close quote. The former executive director responded by letter on May 27, 2022, and her response is attachment E to your staff report, stating that she disagreed with the auditor's findings in regards to her compensation and requested evidence from the city demonstrating any overpayments. By follow-up letter, I provided the former executive director the same packet of documents provided to us by the auditor in support of the auditor's findings. She responded by letter on June 16, 2022, which is attachment G to your staff report, stating that upon review of the auditor's documentation, she, quote, "still does not believe the corporation overpaid her," close quote. And she further pointed out that the audit reports did not include any express findings of these overpayments. And as I noted previously, the auditor explained that those findings of overpayments were not included in the audit report or the internal control letters at the request of the corporation made through its counsel. I responded by letter on July 5th, 2022, and that letter is attachment H to your staff report, stating in pertinent part the following, quote, "While I know you disagree with the auditor's conclusions, you have yet to provide an explanation as to why the above listed payments, which were in addition to your annual salary, were proper. So that I have your position and can provide your explanation to the council, would you please explain the basis for the above payments and why during calendar year 2020 you received $2,000 in sick pay and $6,000 in vacation pay, which amounts appear to be in addition to your salary. As mentioned previously, the city is relying upon the findings of the auditor and the documentations provided. As you were the sole person in charge of handling payroll for the corporation, and given the lack of any FBID board minutes approving the above referenced payments, your explanation is critical for the council's consideration. At this point, all the council has is the auditor's conclusions." Close quote. The former executive director responded by letter on July 14, 2022, which is attachment I to your staff report, stating in pertinent part that she processed her own checks with the guidance of and approval of the board. She did not, however, provide any specific explanation for why the particular payments were made and whether those payments were proper. Following receipt of this letter, the city manager contacted the former executive director directly to discuss. During the call, the city manager conveyed his desire to see that this issue be resolved in an amicable and efficient manner. And the former executive director continued to deny receiving any overpayments of compensation and accused the city of harassing her and asked that the city not contact her further. As I know this issue has garnered some publicity, I felt it was important to present this series of events and the facts and circumstances regarding the audit to you directly during a public meeting. The question then becomes, what can the city do about the matter when the former executive director denies that any overpayments of compensation were received and accordingly refuses to reimburse any or all of the amount found by the auditor to constitute an overpayment? And that's what I'd like to focus on next. As the council knows, the city contracted with a distinct corporation through a contract to administer FBID funds. The only direct relationship we have was with the corporation. We did not have any direct contractual relationship with any of the corporation's employees, including the former executive director. And so accordingly, the council's remedies are limited to pursuing remedies directly through the corporation. Unfortunately, at this point, the corporation has dissolved and the corporation has sent all of its assets back to the city since those assets were acquired through the FBID assessments. And so from the city's perspective, there's no party to directly hold accountable if in fact the auditor's conclusions that overpayments were made is true. We cannot, and I would not recommend that the city pursue any direct action against the former executive director. Again, that individual was not the city's employee, and the city has no direct contractual relationship with her. Even if the city were able to pursue a direct cause of action, the likely cost of pursuing that cause of action would exceed the estimated recovery for the amount of the overpayment, making it an inefficient and not cost-effective method of pursuing recovery. And so at this point, without voluntary compliance, the city really has no viable legal methodology to pursue direct recovery if in fact these overpayments were made. The other thing I should note is, while the auditor's conclusion that overpayments were made is strong evidence, there is a lack of direct evidence of overpayments. The auditor found these payments by noting that they were in addition to the former executive director's annual salary. And typically, salaried employees do not receive additional paid time off in excess of their salary. They simply continue to receive their salary during the time period in which they're taking paid time off. And so the auditor was unable to explain those payments. And in the auditor's 6-year dive into the corporation's records and interviews of pertinent individuals, the auditor was unable to determine whether or not these payments in excess of annual salary were approved by the board, which was the governing body and the body that supervised the executive director. The other thing I'd note is that, as I mentioned, the corporation has dissolved and the city has terminated the contract with the corporation largely as a result of the audit. And the city is moving forward, as has been discussed at prior council meetings, with a new method of administering FBID in-house, at least for the time being. And so any continued concerns that the FBID assessments would not be administered appropriately is alleviated by the fact that this is now being done in-house and with closer scrutiny than has been exercised in the past. And so with that, I'll stop there, and I'm happy to address any questions that the council may have. Thank you.
Thank you, Ryan. Does anyone from the council have any questions?
Yes. Okay. Ryan, this is Mike Losi. So let me ask this. With regard to the audit and what you found going through the information, is there anything to indicate that there would be a prosecutable criminal case here?
I have not found that, but again, that would be a determination to be made by the appropriate law enforcement agency. What I can say is that the auditor has formed her conclusions with respect to the money, that these appear to be overpayments of compensation, and whether or not this rises to the level of criminal activity is something that I'm not in a position to opine on.
Okay, and just for clarification, the executive director was Diana Rios, and the president of the corporation, at least in May 2022, was Emily Hobelman?
Correct.
And you mentioned that, and I believe it was around or on December of 2021, that the auditor met with Diana Rios and talked about, among other things, the overpayment and encouraged her to pay the overpayment because they were unauthorized payments. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And I'm assuming, I don't know, but I'm assuming the auditor, showed Ms. Rios at least some of the evidence that there would have been overpayments made.
I don't know that to be true one way or the other. What I can say is that Ms. Rios indicated in her initial response that she had not received any, quote, evidence, close quote, of the overpayments and would not repay any of the funds without seeing such evidence, which is why I provided her a complete copy of what the auditor provided to the city to support the auditor's conclusions.
So she has seen that evidence of these unauthorized overpayments.
Correct, and just as the council knows, that packet of documents that I provided Ms. Rios is included with the staff report as an enclosure to the particular transmittal letter. And that document consists of a cover page prepared by the auditor of a chart that shows the date and amount of the payments and the tax consequence on each of those payments to the corporation. Behind the cover letter are internal payroll processing documents and also financial reports, a general ledger of all payroll entries and also a financial report, a detailed financial report for all of the corporation's employees for each of the relevant years that show how these overpayments were made, whether they were in hourly compensation or vacation or otherwise. And it is those financial reports that form the basis of the auditor's conclusions.
And if I understand correctly, the city of Fortuna would have no legal recourse at this point against Diana Rios because she was an employee of the corporation, not an employee of the city.
That's correct. Our recourse would be against the corporation for breach of contract, and the corporation is now dissolved and its assets have been transitioned back to the city as they rightly should have been.
And you mentioned the auditor withholding or not including information about the overpayments in the audit report. What about recourse on the part of the city with regard to that auditor?
I don't believe there would be any viable direct recourse against the auditor. The auditor removed those findings at the request of the corporation's counsel based on a series of discussions that the city was not privy to. And I don't see any basis at this point to pursue any direct legal recovery against the auditor. The auditor was retained directly by the corporation. The city was not the auditor's client.
So she wouldn't have a fiduciary responsibility to the city, only the corporation and those businesses represented by the corporation.
The fiduciary duty would flow to the corporation.
So let me ask you this. The city cannot pursue recovery. What about against either Diana Rios or the auditor? What about the individual businesses if 1, 2, or 3, or a dozen of these businesses got together and decided to hire an attorney and file a cause of action against Diana Rios, or for that matter, against the auditor for the lack of her fiduciary responsibilities, or maybe both of them?
Well, I'm not in a position to opine as to the viability of any cause of action to be asserted by a third party. Ultimately, it becomes an issue of fact and proof with respect to these payments. And the city is relying upon the auditor's findings of these overpayments and the lack of a definitive explanation from Ms. Rios as to these particular payments. Whether or not there may be a cause of action that can be asserted by a third party against either the corporation or the auditor, I'm not in a position to speak to at this point.
Okay. It is possible that if there was a cause of action brought by a business or several businesses together, and it was found that in fact there was an authorized overpayment, a court could order that repayment to be made, as well as, and this is again just an opine, but any legal costs to litigate that issue, correct?
Generally speaking, litigants in California are responsible for their own attorney's fees. This general rule is only changed when either a contract directly between the parties or a statute allows the prevailing party to recover attorney's fees. I am not aware of any statutory basis upon which attorney's fees would be recoverable in such an action if it were viable and those third parties prevailed. The contract between the city and the corporation could not be used by a third party to that contract as a basis to recover fees. Again, if in fact the third parties prevailed in such an action.
Okay. Thank you.
Sure.
And we're not here to, we're not going to shoot the messenger. You've done an excellent job in this report and laying out the facts here, and we do appreciate your report on this.
Sure, and just to note, you know, the city exercised, from a contractual perspective, its correct option in terminating the contract and seeing to the orderly transition of all the corporation's assets back to the city. And I would note that the corporation through those remaining members of its board were very helpful in seeing that FBID's funds and its assets were returned to the city. And that includes remaining funds in the corporation's accounts, and those business items and personal property that the corporation had acquired through its many years administering FBID on behalf of the city.
Thank you, Ryan. Does anyone else have any thoughts or comments? Mike covered it pretty well like that.
I wrote some questions down earlier, but in Mike and Ryan's Q&A back and forth, they got answered.
Same here. Anybody else? Does anyone from the public wish to comment on this item?
My name is Walt Wilson. I'm a resident of Fortuna. Ryan, you did a great job. I have a little experience in the litigation field from the insurance side, about 30 years worth. And at some point, most issues reach a point where you have to either go forth or go home. And I think you have reached the point here where it's time to go home. Pursuing this matter further is a waste of money. And I certainly encourage you to just put it to bed. Thanks. And thank you, Ryan.
Thank you, Walt. Anyone else? Seeing none, we'll close public comment. And our action is to provide direction to staff as appropriate.
I have one more comment to say. Reading all of the reports and everything, this isn't the only thing that was in the report, but this was the only thing that they had actual proof of. There was a lot of cash dealings that they had no bookkeeping on. There was credit card use that they had, you know, that looked like it was misused. There was a lot of other things, but they chose to try to pursue this here. It's just sad that all of this happened and there was no oversight on all of this and some more guidance. And, you know, there's not really a whole lot the city can do about it. And it's sad that you know, you see this happen pretty often, and most of the time people just get away with it. And it's just very sad to see it happen.
Anyone else?
Well, I think Walt said it best. Without any ability to take, you know, any cause of action, I think we just have to, how'd you put it, go home? Unfortunately. I'd love to do something, but I think our hands are tied.
Yeah, we've had legal discussions with our city attorney, and you're just going to throw more money out trying to collect money that you may never collect, and it doesn't make any sense. So
yeah, I think we've ridden this horse as long as we can.
So I think that's kind of the council's conclusion, is that we have brought it to the attention of everyone that needed to hear about it, and we are going to put it to rest and go on and keep the city running in a more positive direction.
Maybe some of the businesses out there have heard what was said here and might consider that.
All right. Well, thank you, Ryan. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Have a good night.
You too.
Thank you, Ryan.
All right. Our next item is our city manager's report.
Yes, good evening, Honorable Mayor and City Council. So the city manager is at a League of California Cities conference, so I'm filling in for him for this week while he is out. So I'll just go over the upcoming meeting dates for the members of the public that are watching and are in attendance. Our next regular city council meeting is on Monday, September 19th at 6 p.m. Our next planning commission meeting is on Tuesday, September 27th at 6 p.m. Our next Measure E meeting is on Tuesday, September 20th at 5:30 p.m. And this is the meeting where we'll be reviewing some preliminary results for the fiscal year ended 2022. And then the next Roanoke Community Recreation and Park District meeting was canceled, and that was set for September 7th, so the next meeting will be in October. And then the city manager included a few items as part of his city manager's report that I'll go ahead and read for the members of the public. So staff has advertised for the FBID board positions to serve on the advisory committee that was newly created at previous council meetings. Staff have transmitted written comments on the police facility to Whitchurch Engineering, and they are currently working on responding to comments on the building permit submittal. Staff are close to completing an overview of the specific plan for the former Palco mill site, and will be scheduling meetings in the near future to solicit input from key stakeholders that own properties on or near the mill site. And then finally, staff are working on a draft solid waste franchise agreement with Recology, and we plan to bring that to a future council workshop for consideration. And this would be a new franchise agreement that will replace the agreement executed in 1998 and will incorporate needed provisions to comply with SB 1383. And that concludes my report.
Thanks, Aaron. We probably shouldn't ask you any questions because it's really not your report, so thank you. Appreciate you filling in and doing all the things. Our next item is future agenda items. Is there anything that we haven't discussed previously? Anything new?
Can't think now.
Okay, good. Moving on to city council reports, Mike Johnson.
Well, I haven't had a whole lot going on, but that's about to change. Tomorrow, we have the North State, or actually the North Deal District Engineers and Locals meeting with Caltrans, and it'll be exciting. One of the items that I plan to bring up is the GHD's contract. Next week, on the 14th, is a Historical Commission meeting, and on the 15th is our regular HCOG meeting. So getting busy again. And that's all I have to report now until we actually have the meetings.
All right. Thank you, Mike. Mike Losi.
Thank you. On the August 25th, I had an RCEA meeting, and we had an update from the executive director, Matthew Marshall, and our RE Repower, Repower's Humboldt Energy Strategic Plan, and that can be viewed at the RCEA website. The board approved a cooperative agreement with Acre Offshore USA for offshore wind development. The agreement sets out primary issues that will be negotiated for inclusion in one or more future agreements if Acre Offshore USA is successful in the upcoming bidding process for leasing the future wind sites. So we're looking forward to that, and I believe it was commented that it's a good possibility or probability that Acre USA will receive that bid. Matthew also reported that the California Energy Commission proposed to provide $700,000 to Humboldt County to install more EV storage stations in rural Humboldt. So that'll be good news for the eastern part and southern part of our county. The commission is also expanding the heat pump rebate program. If you install a rebate or a heat pump into your house, you can get a part of that cost as a state rebate covered. The airport microgrid, which is up and functioning, was approved for island mode, which means that in a disaster, a natural disaster, that will allow the airport and Coast Guard station to continue operations via the microgrid and not lose power. RCEA is also exploring an islanding project with solar storage in eastern Humboldt County. Willow Creek, Hoopaw, in those communities, since they're on a separate power grid from Humboldt Bay Power Plant. And the final notice of the lease for the offshore wind project leasing program by BOEM, that's the Bureau of Ocean Energy, will be reported by the end of 2022, so we will know which company or companies will win the lease. This is mind-boggling to me. By the end of the build-out, this entire project is projected to cost over $10 billion, with a B, billion dollars, with full build-out providing 1,500 megawatts of energy, which will require transmission lines in Humboldt County to be increased, as well as all the way east to connect to the connector line in the valley. And 1,500 megawatts is huge, considering the initial project, offshore project, will create 150 megawatts, and our own Humboldt Bay power plant provides about 160 megawatts. So with full build out, it's projected to power, I don't know how many thousands, many thousands of houses throughout Northern California, residences and businesses. So, and that's all I have.
All right, thanks. Jeremy.
Well, my responsibilities are with FBID, so we've already talked that one out. And then the Parks and Rec Commission, we actually had a cancellation of a meeting, but I have to tell you that I know I probably say it too often or every time we meet, but just the work that those guys do behind the scenes, keep our town beautiful, and everything that they are doing to, you know, besides Parks and Rec and roads, keeping those curbs painted up and sidewalks. And I noticed the other day there was a pretty big break in the sidewalk there over by Safeway, and they got that all dialed in and safe for our public. And then just to the public in general, just appreciate everybody being really mindful of everybody's back in school now. So just please give yourself an extra 5 minutes and take time to be safe. That's all I got.
Thanks, Jeremy. Tammy.
That was always Dean's line.
Oh.
Everybody's back in school, so be careful of the crosswalks. Downtown merchants every Friday, or for the first Friday of every month, have a downtown merchants open house. And I've gone to the last two of them. There hasn't been a whole lot of people there, but I think maybe everybody doesn't know. Last week was pretty fun. They had a axe throwing event there, and both of our canines were down there and did some demonstrations. Those dogs are pretty impressive. They're fun to watch them work, and their handlers are, you know, you can tell that there's a lot of love between those, the handlers and the dogs. So that was kind of fun, and that's about all I have to report.
Thanks, Tammy. Mike Johnson and I attended the Redwood Empire Division of the League of California Cities meeting in Point Arena. It was a fun trip, but it was a bit challenging. There was no place to eat in Point Arena. We didn't know that till we were there. So trying to find food became an adventure, and we've got lots of stories. Sarah, our rep from the California League California Cities, says, well, that's one lunch that I'll never forget about, Sue. So we made memories. It was nice to see everybody. It was nice to be in person, even though the drive was long. It was it was just worth being around all of our neighboring city constituents and electeds, and I'm really glad I went. REDAC continues to make loans. They're positioned very well with the amount of money that we have and the amount of money that we've loaned and the amount of income that's coming in. So that's always exciting to know that we're continually helping businesses either stay afloat or get going. Hops and Humboldt went off pretty well. I don't think we had any like major issues with people being too crazy and out of control and all of the things. Crowd was smaller than usual, but it also went well. So, I mean, I don't know. Maybe we want to keep it smaller than usual. I don't know. But one more event behind us. Our next one coming up is Apple Harvest. So Fortuna has great events, and it's fun. I'm really excited about this cross-country thing. I think that's going to pull in a huge amount of families and, you know, really boost our businesses, our hotels, and kind of a downtime. So, you know, November, there's not much happening here. So that is going to be really cool. So I'll do my best to help them with whatever they need help with. So, and with that, I think we're probably done. All right.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Thanks for coming, you guys.